What's up traders, Tom here with another video. Today we will be discussing the great man, Warren Buffett. I didn't expect to be talking about him again this soon, but he has just filed selling a massive stake in Goldman Sachs, 2.8 billion to be exact. So has Warren Buffett lost faith in the stock market, or is he up to something else? Stay tuned. As always, I just want to remind everybody that if you're enjoying our content, please make sure to subscribe and of course hit the bell and join our free trading Telegram group down below in the links if you'd like to join the trading community. So I'd like to begin this video by talking about treasury issuances. And I just want to bring this up because it leads into our Buffett discussion and our technical analysis discussion later in the video. Now, we all know that this is going to happen, but this chart really puts in perspective what has happened over the last decade in terms of issuances and policy. In 2006, 2007, we can see how low it was. And then as the GFC moved on, 2008, 2009, 2010, it got larger, followed by a pare back, and then an increase actually leading into this crisis. Now, I've been a big proponent on this channel, and I will continue to be a big proponent of looking at the trends and looking at what happens in other economies when they start policies which you just cannot turn off because of the way the monetary system works. I believe what's over here on the right is going to be such a big problem that it's going to be so difficult to turn off the tap when we eventually do get through this crisis, which we will at some point as an economy, and a global economy at that. So very interesting chart, and I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. So that brings me to the second chart, and this chart is about central banks which have resumed asset purchases at a fairly rapid pace since the crisis began. Now, I always will talk about Bank of Japan in these statements because Bank of Japan is the only real economy that's been doing so much of this for so long. And we've talked about it on the channel. I'll put it in the card if you haven't watched that video yet. Very much worthwhile doing so. And we will cover this more to think about what's going to happen in the future. And I think people like Buffett are looking at these charts and they're making decisions based on what they see happening in the future, and also that the Fed will not be able to continue pumping. They have to pull back to a degree at some point because otherwise they really will blow up effectively the monetary system. So the Fed has a steady increase in purchases here. And of course, the Bank of Japan came in, more importantly, slightly higher than actually zero. And that's because they were already trying to pare it down, weren't able to do so, and they've had to now ramp it up again. So very interesting to see what every single country is having to do. Look at how many have just started policies like this. There we go. So many of them starting policies. Important to watch this over the next coming months to see how many countries are going to be stuck in effectively a never-ending system that has begun. So most of you are probably here to talk about Buffett. And of course, Buffett has just filed that they have trimmed exposures to banks and sold out of travelers. Very important that they've done that as well. Now, this comes off the back of information where, of course, Buffett has sold so many stocks. He has sold his airline stocks and he sold other stocks as well. That is very unusual for him. He usually long holds stocks through crisis periods and has been well known to do this over the long term. So it could be the end of the Buffett era as we know it. But at the same time, what we are seeing is we are seeing someone that is already holding a huge portion of cash, looking at the figures, looking at the market, looking at the evaluations, and saying, I don't believe that these make sense. And we have to listen because this is one of the best and greatest investors, arguably the greatest investor of all time, and he is cutting positions. So it makes sense for other people to pay attention. Remember, he sold American Airlines, Delta, United Continental Holdings, and Southwest Airlines recently. Many channels have discussed this, but I think today, wow, it is just amazing that he's done this. So Goldman Sachs, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, has actually slashed $2.8 billion of stock to less than $300 million, and that is an 84% reduction in holdings. He has never done this. Now, for anyone that knows, Warren Buffett has been a big proponent of holding financials and holding banks through crisis periods. In fact, he has a storied past with Goldman about what he did during the GFC with them. So to dump this stock and also to dump a few other smaller positions in terms of banks, he is making a massive financial statement about what he thinks value is in the market. And I think this is very concerning for people that are looking at the market being a good value proposition right now. Remember, Druckenmiller also has come out and said, I don't see the risk reward making sense. I totally agree. Risk reward makes no sense in the market right now. We can say the Fed is supporting it. We can say all of these things. It makes me kind of annoyed about what's happening. Again, I've mentioned this on the channel just from a perspective of the market being so manipulated. But look, I'm a long holder as well. So I don't mind it goes up, but I do think that I prefer trading a market or being in a market that is fairly or more fairly priced. And that may never happen again, but these guys seem to think it is. Now, David Tepper, he also said the second most overvalued stock market now since 99, so since the tech bust. We had crazy profit earnings ratios and a lot of companies that really weren't even companies at that time. Of course, everyone remembers, everyone's done the study on that. We won't go into it, but it's interesting. Everybody is starting to think that there is overpriced action in the markets. So when we're talking about Warren Buffett and we're talking about Goldman Sachs, we can see how much he chose to purchase of Goldman. He purchased $5 billion of Goldman Sachs around here at this point during the GFC. Now, of course, it fell off further. He also had warrants that he took during that time. We have discussed this on the channel. A lot of people know this. And he exercised the warrants and has done all of that. But look, he is known to purchase these types of companies. And remember, during the GFC, he actually purchased it at a discount, but not an extreme discount to where it actually ended up going. So Warren Buffett is known to actually have a bit of a nibble at a smaller pullback in the market than eventually did happen. This time he's selling them. He's buying very small positions. He's selling most of his portfolio and he's cashing up. And if someone's cashing up and everybody else is buying and has FOMO and has all of these things going on, you really do need to pay some form of attention in your portfolios. Just quickly bring up this real estate market versus the market shows that REITs are really doing poorly. REITs are 21% this year down based on the S&P. It went against the S&P, which has fallen 12%. So you can see that this is an underperforming sector. Real estate doesn't seem to do that well in America during crisis periods. In Australia, don't worry, it's backed by our government. It does really well. But in America, the stock market has always been the one that they've protected. So that's another interesting thing to take away from today. Depending on your country, certain countries seem to protect different asset classes. Make sure you're aware of that, because when it comes to investments long term, if your country likes protecting an asset class, then that asset class often outperforms. In Australia, I'm telling you, it is property. They back property so hard in Australia with all sorts of plans, and maybe I'll bring it up on the channel because it's a great discussion. But certain countries will back different asset classes. On to the technicals. Apple did not manage to actually close below that trend line we had yesterday when we went onto the 4-hour. We mentioned, can it get below $300? Pre-market, it was sitting there, but the strong market and the strong FOMO is very, very high on this. If we look at Apple from a weekly perspective, I just want to show everyone how ridiculously priced this stock is, because it does have concerns. There are sections of Apple that are doing great, sections of Apple that aren't doing that well. We had a massive evaluation coming into Apple. There was growth, there was other things going on. It came to about $327, dropped off to around $212, $213. And then we're back up to basically the same peak that we were before this entire crisis. So Apple is relatively either fairly priced, like fully fairly priced, or slightly overpriced right now from what we're seeing. In terms of the Nasdaq, key support trend line still not broken, still strong, and we maintain that we need to get under this 9,000 barrier, and we really need to close under 8,000, kind of 800 in terms of the real market. This is the futures market, for us to see further weakness. So we hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, make sure to leave a comment down below talking about your opinions on the stock market right now. And of course, subscribe and hit that alert button for more financial content in the future. Happy trading, everyone, and have a great weekend. See ya.